I need to be honest with you. We are headed towards something most people are not prepared for. I have been tracking supply chain data, government purchasing patterns, and international trade restrictions for the past 2 years. And what I am seeing points to potential rationing of specific goods by mid-2026. Not everything. Just 8 critical categories that could be controlled, limited, or completely unavailable. And the crazy part is that right now, these items are sitting on shelves, fully available, and nobody is paying attention. Number 5 on this list is something 90% of households use daily, but when I show you the government stockpiling data, you're going to understand why you need to act now. And number 7 is going to shock you because it is not food, it is not water, but without it, your entire plan falls apart. Before we dive in, hit that subscribe button right now. This kind of information does not stay available forever, and you need to be ahead of this. Let me be clear about something. I am not talking about a zombie apocalypse. I am talking about policy-driven rationing, the kind we have seen before in history during wartime, economic collapse, and supply chain breakdowns. It happens quietly. First, limits on purchase quantities. Then, rationing cards. Then, empty shelves. Let's get into the 8 goods you need to start buying now. Good number 1 is petroleum-based products. Gasoline, diesel, and heating oil. Now, you might think this is obvious, but most people have no idea how bad this could get. I have been following the Strategic Petroleum Reserve data. We are at the lowest levels since 1983. And here's what nobody is talking about. Between now and 2026, 3 major refineries in the U.S. are scheduled to close permanently, not reduce capacity, close completely. That is millions of gallons per day taken offline. But here is where it gets real. European countries are already implementing fuel rationing policies. France introduced fuel purchase limits last year. Germany is preparing a tiered system where non-essential driving gets restricted. The infrastructure is being built right now for rationing systems. Let me tell you what happened to my cousin in Sri Lanka during their fuel crisis. He is a doctor. He could not get to the hospital for his shifts because fuel was rationed and his quota ran out. Doctors were sleeping at hospitals because they could not get home. That is how fast this happens. Here is what I am doing personally. I keep a rotation of 5-gallon fuel cans with stabilizer. I am not hoarding. I am maintaining a 3-month supply that I rotate through my vehicles. The key is adding fuel stabilizer. Without it, gasoline degrades in 3 to 6 months. With stabilizer, you get 12 to 24 months. I use PRIG. It costs about $30 for a bottle that treats 256 gallons. Here is the math that changed my thinking. If rationing limits you to 5 gallons per week and you need 10 gallons to get to work, you are immediately in crisis mode. But if you have 60 gallons in storage, rotating it every few months, you have a 6-week buffer to figure things out. Store fuel in a detached garage or shed, never in your house. Keep it away from ignition sources. Use metal or approved plastic containers. And here is something most people miss. Diesel stores better than gasoline. If you have the option to own a diesel vehicle, that is a strategic advantage. Diesel lasts years with proper stabilizer. Beyond vehicle fuel, think about heating oil. If you heat your home with oil, prices are already climbing. Contracts that used to lock in prices are being canceled by suppliers. That is a red flag. I locked in a full tank delivery and prepaid for next season. It cost me $2,400, but that is insurance against rationing or price spikes. The bottom line is this: mobility is survival. If you cannot move, you cannot work, escape danger, or reach supplies. Fuel rationing removes your mobility. Start building your reserve now while it's still legal and available. Look, grocery prices are rising faster than most people can keep up with. I have done the math for you and put together a free emergency pantry blueprint that lists the exact 15 items you must keep, which you can buy from any store. It can feed your family for 2 weeks and costs less than takeout. You can grab the list for free at the link in description so you can stop worrying and start prepping. Good number 2 is prescription medications. This is the one that keeps me up at night. I have been researching pharmaceutical supply chains, and it is way more fragile than people realize. Here are the facts. About 80% of the active pharmaceutical ingredients in U.S. medications come from China and India. We are completely dependent on foreign supply chains, and tensions are rising. Trade restrictions are increasing. If something disrupts that flow, we are looking at critical shortages within weeks, and it has already started happening. Last year, there were shortages of amoxicillin, ADHD medications, and even basic blood pressure meds. Pharmacies were rationing. Doctors were scrambling to find alternatives. Now imagine that gets worse. Imagine rationing cards for medications. It is not far-fetched. During COVID, we saw it with ventilators and PPE. Medications are next. Here is what I did, and I am going to be very careful how I say this. Talk to your doctor honestly. Explain that you travel frequently or that you want an emergency supply. Many doctors will prescribe a 90-day supply instead of 30 days. That is legal and common. Some insurance companies actually encourage it because it is cheaper. I went through my medicine cabinet and identified everything my family takes regularly: thyroid medication, blood pressure meds, asthma inhalers. Then I worked with my doctor to get 90-day supplies and refill them as early as insurance allows. You can also ask your doctor about generic alternatives that might have better availability. Sometimes the brand name comes from one factory, but the generic has multiple sources. For over-the-counter medications, I keep a serious stockpile: pain relievers, antidiarrheal meds, antihistamines, cold and flu medications. I am talking about a 2-year supply for my family. It cost me about $300, but I bought over 6 months, a little each trip. Here is the critical part most people miss. Medications have expiration dates, but studies show many remain effective for years past that date when stored properly. Keep them in a cool, dark, dry place. Heat and humidity are the enemies. I use a plastic bin in my basement with silica gel packets. And here is something that could save your life. If you take a critical medication, research what happens if you stop taking it suddenly. Some medications, like beta blockers or antidepressants, are dangerous to quit cold turkey. Knowing this helps you prioritize which meds to stockpile most aggressively. The reality is this: if rationing hits medications, people will die. It is that simple. Diabetics without insulin, heart patients without blood thinners, asthmatics without inhalers. Do not let your family be in that position. Good number 3 is imported food staples. We're talking about coffee, chocolate, cooking oils, spices, anything that comes from overseas. Here is what the data shows. Climate change is hammering coffee-growing regions. Brazil, Vietnam, Colombia are all seeing reduced yields. Coffee prices have jumped 40% in the past year alone, and it is not getting better. Chocolate is the same story. Cocoa crops are failing. Major chocolate manufacturers are already reformulating products with less cocoa. In 5 years, real chocolate might be a luxury item. But here is the bigger issue. Cooking oils. About 30% of the cooking oil in the U.S. is imported. Palm oil, olive oil, coconut oil, all vulnerable to export restrictions. We have already seen countries ban exports of food staples to protect their own populations. India banned rice exports. Russia restricted wheat. When countries feel pressure, they take care of themselves first. Here is what I am stockpiling. Coffee. I bought 20 pounds of whole bean coffee and vacuum sealed it in 1-pound bags. Whole beans last way longer than ground coffee. Stored properly, they stay fresh for 2 years. I also bought instant coffee. I know it is not as good, but in a rationing scenario, having any coffee is better than none. For cooking oils, I focus on oils with long shelf life. Coconut oil lasts 2 to 3 years. Olive oil lasts about 2 years if stored in a dark bottle away from heat. I keep about 10 gallons of various oils in rotation. Spices are another big one. Most spices are imported. If trade routes get disrupted, good luck finding black pepper, cinnamon, or cumin. I went to a restaurant supply store and bought spices in bulk. 1-pound bags instead of those tiny grocery store bottles. I repackaged them in small mason jars and stored them in my pantry. Total cost was about $150, and I have a 5-year supply of every spice my family uses. Here's a pro tip. Salt. It never goes bad. Ever. and it is essential for preserving food. I keep 50 pounds of various salts. Iodized for nutrition, sea salt for cooking, canning salt for preservation. It cost me less than $30. Chocolate is harder because it melts and degrades, but I buy high-quality dark chocolate bars and store them in a cool, dark place. I also bought cocoa powder in bulk. It lasts for years, and you can make hot chocolate or use it in baking. The point is this: these imported staples are things we take for granted, but they're luxuries made possible by global trade. If that system wobbles, these are the first things to disappear or become unaffordable. Good number 4 is building materials and repair supplies. This is one most preppers completely overlook, but it is critical. Lumber, plywood, nails, screws, basic hardware. All of this could be rationed or become insanely expensive. We already saw it during COVID. Lumber prices went up 400%. A sheet of plywood went from $10 to $90. It was insane, and it could happen again. Here's why. Tariffs on imported materials are increasing. Domestic production is not ramping up fast enough. And if we hit a real economic crisis, construction stops, suppliers go bankrupt, and suddenly you cannot find basic materials. Let me tell you what happened to my neighbor last winter. A storm damaged his roof. Shingles were ripped off. He called around to buy materials to patch it himself. Nobody had shingles in stock. He was put on a waiting list. It took 3 weeks to get materials. Meanwhile, his house was leaking. Now imagine that scenario. But it is not just a local shortage. It is national. It is rationing. You are waiting months. Here's what I did. I bought basic repair supplies in bulk. 2x4s, plywood sheets, roofing tar, nails, screws, brackets, duct tape, heavy-duty plastic sheeting. I have enough materials to do emergency repairs on my house without relying on stores. I also bought a serious toolkit, not the cheap stuff. Quality tools that will last. Because in a rationing scenario, tools become incredibly valuable. You can repair things instead of replacing them. Plumbing supplies are another big one. PVC pipes, fittings, plumber's tape, sealant. If something breaks and you cannot get a plumber, you need to fix it yourself. I also stocked up on things like caulk, with glue, epoxy, sandpaper, and work gloves. It sounds boring, but this is the stuff that keeps your house functional. Here's the logic. Your home is your primary survival asset. If it becomes damaged and you cannot repair it, you are in serious trouble. Keeping a stockpile of basic building materials is insurance. And honestly, even if rationing never happens, these materials hold value. Lumber does not go bad. Nails do not expire. You will use them eventually. Good number 5 is hygiene and sanitation products. All right, number 5 is something people do not want to talk about, but it is absolutely critical. Toilet paper, soap, shampoo, toothpaste, feminine hygiene products, diapers. Remember the toilet paper panic of 2020? That was not a supply chain collapse. That was just panic buying. Now imagine actual rationing. Imagine stores limiting you to 1 pack per month. How long does your family go through a pack of toilet paper? For most families, it is 1 to 2 weeks. If you are limited to 1 pack per month, you are in trouble fast. Here's what I did. I bought a 6-month supply of toilet paper. It is bulky, yes, but I found space. I store it in the garage on shelves. It cost me about $120. That is peace of mind. But here is the bigger issue. Soap, not just for cleaning, but for preventing disease. In a sanitation crisis, disease spreads fast. Cholera, dysentery, typhoid, all of these come from poor sanitation. Bar soap lasts forever. I bought 50 bars of basic unscented soap. Total cost was $40. I also stocked up on liquid soap, dish soap, and laundry detergent. For toothpaste, I have about 30 tubes. That is a 2-year supply. Dental health is critical. An infected tooth can kill you if you do not have access to antibiotics or dentists. Feminine hygiene products are another big one. If you have women in your household, stock up. These products are not luxuries. They are necessities. I also researched reusable options like menstrual cups, which last for years. For families with babies, diapers are non-negotiable. I know people who keep a 1-year supply of diapers in various sizes. It sounds crazy until you imagine not being able to buy them. Here is the uncomfortable truth. Hygiene and sanitation are what separate modern life from medieval conditions. If these products become rationed, quality of life collapses fast. People get sick, morale tanks, families struggle. Do not overlook this category. Good number 6 is batteries and power storage. This is a big one, and most people are not thinking about it correctly. We're not just talking about AA batteries for flashlights. We are talking about rechargeable battery systems, solar generators, and portable power stations. Here's the reality. The electrical grid is fragile. We have seen rolling blackouts in California, Texas, and other states, and it is getting worse. Aging infrastructure, increased demand, and extreme weather are pushing the system to its limits. If rationing extends to electricity, you need independent power. I invested in a solar generator system, not the cheap one. A serious 2,000-watt system with expandable solar panels. It cost me $2,200, but it can power my refrigerator, charge devices, and run critical appliances. I also bought rechargeable batteries in every size. AA, AAA, C, D, and 9-volt, plus a quality battery charger that runs on solar or AC power. Here is why this matters. If electricity is rationed and you are limited to certain hours per day, you need to store power when it is available and use it when it is not. Battery banks do that. But here is what most people get wrong. They buy a generator that runs on gasoline. That is fine, but if fuel is rationed, your generator is useless. Solar is unlimited. As long as the sun comes up, you have power. I also stocked up on simple things like headlamps, lanterns, and hand crank flashlights. You do not need electricity for these. For communication, I bought a hand crank emergency radio. It receives AM, FM, and weather alerts, and it charges via solar or hand crank. No batteries needed. Here is the strategy. Think about what you absolutely need power for. Medical devices, refrigeration, communication, light. Prioritize those. Then build a system that can provide power independently. You do not need to power your whole house. You just need to power what matters. Good number 7 is water filtration and storage. Here is the thing that is going to sound extreme, but I stand by it. Water could be rationed, not because there is not enough water, but because the infrastructure to treat and deliver it is failing. We have seen it already. Flint, Michigan, Jackson, Mississippi. Entire cities lost access to clean water, and it took months to fix. Now scale that up. Imagine a regional crisis. Imagine rationing, where you're limited to a certain number of gallons per household per week. You cannot shower every day. You cannot wash clothes. You are in survival mode. Here is what I did. I installed a whole house water filter. It cost about $400, and it removes contaminants before water even enters my house. But that is not enough. I also have portable water filtration. I own 3 different systems. A Berkey filter, a Sawyer Mini for portability, and life straws for each family member. For storage, I keep 100 gallons of water in 5-gallon containers, rotated every 6 months. I also have a 50-gallon water barrel in my garage. Is it enough for a year? No, but it is enough to get through a short-term crisis while I figure out long-term solutions. Here is the key insight. Water weighs about 8 pounds per gallon. You cannot store a year's supply unless you have a massive amount of space. So the focus should be on filtration. If you can filter water from any source, you are not dependent on stored water. I also bought water purification tablets. They are lightweight, cheap, and last for years. One bottle treats hundreds of gallons. Here's the reality. Humans can survive weeks without food. We can only survive 3 days without water. If water gets rationed, nothing else matters. Make this a priority. Good number 8 is manual tools and non-electric equipment. This is the last one, and it is something that separates people who will adapt from people who will struggle. We live in an electric world. Everything runs on power. But if electricity is rationed or unreliable, you need manual alternatives. I am talking about hand tools, manual kitchen equipment, non-electric heating, and cooling options. Let me give you examples. I bought a manual grain mill. If I have wheat berries, I can grind fresh flour without electricity. I bought a manual can opener. Sounds basic, but if your electric can opener dies and you have 100 cans of food, you are in trouble. I bought a manual coffee grinder. If I have whole beans, I can still make coffee without power. I invested in hand tools. Manual saws, axes, hammers, screwdrivers, wrenches. These do not require power, and they do not break easily. For cooking, I have a camping stove that runs on propane, a rocket stove that burns wood, and a portable charcoal grill. Multiple options mean if one fuel source is unavailable, I have alternatives. I also bought oil lamps and lamp oil. They provide light and a little heat without electricity. For cooling, I researched passive cooling methods. Fans that run on 12-volt batteries, reflective window covers, and ventilation strategies. For heating, I have a wood stove and a winter's worth of firewood. Here is the mindset shift. Electric tools are convenient, but they are fragile. They depend on a supply chain. Manual tools are anti-fragile. They work no matter what. And here's the bonus. Manual tools hold value. In a rationing economy, people who can fix things, build things, and create things with manual tools become incredibly valuable. You are not just surviving, you are thriving. So here's the bottom line. These 8 goods, petroleum products, medications, imported food, building materials, hygiene products, power systems, water filtration, and manual tools, are at serious risk of rationing by mid-2026. The signs are already here. I am not fear-mongering. I am reading the data and preparing accordingly. You do not need to buy everything tomorrow. Start with one category. Make a plan. Build your stockpile gradually. But start now. If this information helped you, smash that subscribe button and hit the notification bell. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. And leave a comment telling me which of these 8 goods you are prioritizing first. Stay prepared, stay smart, and I will see you in the next one.